Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to BSidesSF 2025. We're really excited that you're here. I'm going to introduce Mr. Let me say this right, Ross Haleliuk. All right, now what he's going to be presenting today is not every groundbreaking idea needs to become a billion-dollar startup. We have approximately 30 minutes. Right behind me, they have put up the QR code for what we call Slido. So if you have questions, instead of speaking to us directly, because we are recording audio and video, you can place your questions on Slido. I'll read them if we have time towards the end, okay? All right, well, please, sir, take it away.
Let's do it. Yes, thank you so much for coming, everybody. It always is quite a bit of pressure following the keynote speaker, so I will try to do my very, very best. Today, as it was said, what I'm going to be talking about is the fact that not every groundbreaking idea in cybersecurity has to become a billion-dollar startup. Now, several things about me to make me seem credible and to make it feel like I have the reason to talk about what I'm going to be talking about. I have done a bunch of different things in my career, primarily focusing on product management and go-to-market. Born and raised in Ukraine, moved to Canada, then moved to the US, to San Francisco. Career-wise, had an interesting journey from fintech to wholesale retail, and obviously ending up in cybersecurity. Today, advisor and an angel investor, published a book about building cybersecurity startups, talking a lot about the business side of the industry and the venture side, the go-to-market, building startups, and so on and so forth, and also myself building a cybersecurity company today. Before we begin, let's have a few notes about the state of cybersecurity as an industry. And many of you have probably seen this slide, or maybe a variation of this slide. So it only highlights the most important or the biggest or the highest traction security companies. There is about 4,000 more. And so if you think about the number of security vendors, it is hard not to think that we've got a lot. We have a cybersecurity startup essentially covering every single problem out there, and also a bunch of startups creating problems or covering problems that do not exist. But either way, it does look like the market is crowded, and cybersecurity is most certainly in the air. Everybody is talking about security. Cisco is becoming a cybersecurity company. As you can see on the screen, from the acquisition of Splunk to Duo Security and OpenDNS and SourceFire and many other options, Cisco has rapidly been transforming from a networking company into a security company. Google is becoming a strong cybersecurity player. Again, the Wiz acquisition is the largest acquisition this tech giant has made in its whole history. If you look at the numbers, like comparably, it is literally almost the sum of all the other big acquisitions that it has done. Like, that's impressive. That most certainly puts security into the headlines. And obviously, if you have been following the news, from Wiz to Splunk to Juniper Networks to Darktrace, Recorded Future, and on, there are billions and billions and billions of dollars that are being invested, are essentially exchanging the hands in the security space, which naturally means that investors are excited. It's no wonder that VCs are excited about security and that there is so much pressure for venture scale exits. Now, what is venture scale? We hear the word venture quite often. We hear the words venture scale, and I don't think we discuss enough what it actually means. And so the way I often look at it is that venture scale is essentially a potential for a startup to grow very quickly and return high amounts of capital at very impressive multiples. So if an investor invested $1 million, getting back 20, 30, 40, $50 million is exactly the desired outcome from their perspective. So venture scale is the ability to generate significant returns and to do it within a relatively short period of time, anywhere between 5 to 10 years, more or less. So what is the state of affairs in the industry? I would say that venture-backed startups quite often win. If you look at any of the companies as a large player, like be it CrowdStrike, Viz, SentinelOne, or absolutely any other vendor, it sounds like being venture-backed is the only way to win, the only way to compete, and the only way to deliver value and to solve security problems. And it kind of makes sense, right? Since buyers are enterprises, security startups have the pressure to be enterprise ready from day one. Now, there is no such pressure in many other industries. In many other industries, companies can start by selling to SMBs and smaller companies and then expand from it. In security, however, Okta started by selling to enterprises, CrowdStrike started by selling to enterprises, and many other companies. Viz started by selling to enterprises. And when you sell to enterprises first, you need a robust product. And the only way you get a robust product is by having enough capital so that you can hire a big enough team and you can invest in R&D. Selling to the enterprise customers requires significant investment. The procurement cycles are slow and very slow. It can take a year and a half for a startup to go through that cycle. And so obviously there is a need for the company to have enough capital to exist for that long. To compete, founders need two things. They need time and they need people. And the best way to buy time is to have enough money on a bank account. The best way to hire the best people, the highest class people, the most experienced people, is to have the money on the bank account. And so cybersecurity founders go to market and raise capital from VCs. Now, here is the harsh truth. Most security startups are tackling problems that are too small for the venture scale outcomes. And let's talk about it. The venture model requires the problem to be big, and it requires the number of people experiencing this problem to also be large, and it requires those people to have deep pockets and pay a lot of money for solving the problem. Now, in security, most problems are fairly niche. A certain number of companies that match a certain criteria will experience the problem where if you're a manufacturer, your threat profile is going to be very different than if you are a SaaS vendor. If you are a cloud provider, your threat profile is going to be different than if you are a retail vendor, and so on and so forth. And for that reason, the target market is generally much smaller than what many VCs expect and what many VCs require in order for the venture model to work. Now, this also means that the VC model can often be harmful to security startups because many of them have absolutely no way to ever satisfy the requirements needed for them to succeed and to actually return the amount of capital that VCs require. And what follows is that if we accept that VC path is the only way to building security companies, we also have to accept that the large number of problems that we experience in the security industry as practitioners is never going to be solved because there is simply not going to be a fit for the venture model. Obviously, that is not a great assumption. There are hundreds and probably more problems that are not venture scale problems. And Kane and Rami have written a fantastic article about what they define as sub-venture scale security problems. It's amazing that Kane is sitting right next to me. So Kane, definitely a shout out for the great work and for putting together this piece. Some of the examples they list is endpoint vulnerability automation. It's the fact that the EDR tools give security practitioners the ability to get vulnerability data, while MDMs have the ability to update packages, but there is often not an easy way to tie those two together, and that is something that they have built in Canva. There is the need to solve the downstream HRIS problem, where a lot of the identity updates originate in the human resource management systems, and oftentimes when those updates get processed, that causes challenges for security teams and for IT teams that need to be solved. There is the need to often essentially rely on the interaction with end users to triage and investigate alerts. And that can be done by integrating with Slack, that can be done by integrating with other solutions. And the way it is often accomplished is by using a SOAR platform and by putting in a lot of effort. And that is something that, again, Rami and Kane discussed in their piece as an example of a sub-venture scale problem that needs to be solved. Now, there is definitely more than 3. And even their article lists many more. And the part that is important is that niche problems present a lot of opportunities. They present a lot of opportunities for startup founders to actually do something impactful and to solve problems they're passionate about, and also to generate revenue and, frankly, make money for themselves. So founders shouldn't ignore niche ideas. They shouldn't default to this is how to build a company, and they shouldn't think of venture as the only way to do it. And today, we are going to be talking about different models, that some of which are alternatives, some of which are sort of derivatives of the venture scale. The number one model is obviously the traditional VC path. Like, this is the default way. This is the way everybody starts a company, the way everybody is thinking about how to build a startup. And most startups generally follow this route, right? You get VC funding. VC funding provides access for rapid scaling. It provides an opportunity to scale hiring. It provides an opportunity to scale the go-to-market strategy. And this is a well-suited strategy for many companies, but not for all. There are benefits and obviously, and there are drawbacks of following this strategy. On the benefit side, this path, the VC path, does provide a lot of capital for growth. It provides networks for hiring. It provides opportunity for partnerships. It provides opportunity for market access. It gives industry credibility, because having a TechCrunch article talking about how the startup just raised money from VCs is most certainly a great thing to share on LinkedIn and to celebrate. But the reality is that all of those benefits, they do also come with drawbacks. They come with drawbacks of having high pressure for scaling and growth, such that many cybersecurity startups simply end up getting run into the ground trying to pursue that path. Companies are often forced to expand too quickly, more quickly than their runway would allow them. There are exit pressures, there's founder dilution, there is the loss of control. There are times when pursuing this path is a good idea, and there are times when it isn't. In short, if the market opportunity is massive, if the company needs the first mover advantage, if it needs a significant GTM investment, that is the right way to do it. If, however, the founders want a long-term control over the strategy, over growth, if the market is too niche or if it is slow-moving, there may be reasons not to do it. There's the second model, which is often talked about as an alternative to the VC model, and it is the bootstrapping model. I call it the hard way. The bootstrapping model focuses on profitability from day one and on finding a problem that companies are willing to pay for solving at the time when the company started. So it requires lean operations, cost control, and efficient capital allocation. It often relies on providing services and starting the company by offering services and then scaling into a product and investing in development. There are not too many examples of those companies in the security space. I'm sure many of you have heard and have probably personally used Think's Canary, Haroon's startup that is widely known in the security community. Haroon was profitable since year one. At this point, they have over 2,000 paying customers, just under 20 million ARR, which is, by the way, more than many VC-backed startups. And they are deployed on all 7 continents, which is a great achievement. Enzyme, a relatively new company in network security space, is another example. There are pros and cons, as with everything. On the pros side, the founders get to retain full control of the vision, of the execution, and ultimately the direction in which the company is going to go. There is no pressure for unrealistic exits. There is no pressure for unrealistic growth. And they get to decide how they want to go about building the company and at what pace they can focus on building a profitable niche business. On the cons, however, it is hard. It's hard because the growth is much slower. Like, right, if there is no injection of capital, it takes time. You have to generate money before you can reinvest them. And that is obviously, that does require much more effort than being venture-backed and having that capital provided to you. It requires early revenue, which is also something that many companies are not able to pursue unless they start by offering services. It's often harder to attract talent because, again, many people like the TechCrunch articles. There are reasons to pursue and not to pursue it. Bootstrapping is a great option to pursue when venture skill isn't necessary, when there is no massive investment needed from day one, and when the founders have an existing industry relationship with a large number of practitioners or strong networks. And obviously, if the market opportunity is massive, there may be reasons to raise capital. Now, the third model, the Silicon Valley small business model. In security, it's not as commonly seen. The whole concept is that you start a company by raising the first round, and then you go from there and work towards the future in which you never raise the next round again. This is still a relatively new path. I don't know of any startup that has explicitly acknowledged that is the path they're pursuing, but there are frankly plenty of startups in the security space that have raised 1 or 2 rounds and then turned the company into a fairly successful business. Again, there are pros and cons. On the pros side, pursuing this path gives founders full control over vision and execution. There is no pressure for forced exits or unrealistic growth, and it allows companies to focus on efficiency and essentially choosing their own way. On the cons side, most investors that would invest in that first round, they do want an impressive exit. They do want hypergrowth. The idea itself, like the model itself, it requires VCs to believe that this is the right path to pursue, and generally most investors do not. So this is still, despite being popularized as the new way of building companies, especially now with AI, that companies can essentially attract a small amount of capital and then raise once and never raise again. Realistically speaking, very few investors will actually agree to do that because the VC model does imply following a certain path, and this is not the path. When to pursue, when not to pursue. If the market values efficiency over hypergrowth, that could be a good option. If the startup can operate profitably with a small team, if the startup can leverage automation, AI, that is also another option. And there are also reasons not to do it. If the market is hyper-competitive, trying to bootstrap often doesn't lead to good results because the startup would then be just squashed by their competitors. And if the market favors aggressive expansion, the same idea. There are plenty of reads and articles about the SVSB model. I frankly find it incredibly interesting. Lastly, there is the services model. Services constitute over 50% of the cybersecurity industry. And it is often, given how often we hear about large security companies getting exits and attracting a lot of funding, it's often too easy to forget that the majority of security companies are actually services companies. And many of them are doing fantastic in terms of, obviously in financial terms, but also in terms of the impact they're able to make on solving the actual problem. Also, most of the merger and acquisitions in the security space actually happen in the services space. Again, something that is very easy to forget. There are benefits and challenges of building a services company in security. On the benefit side, founders are able to start generating income quickly. They can start lean and avoid going out and asking VCs for investment. But then on the negative side, the services companies do tend to have lower margins comparing to SaaS. The scaling process is much more labor intensive. The scaling is often linear. They need to hire more people as the amount of business they do expands. It is harder to fundraise. It is harder to differentiate. And now, of course, VCs are starting to also become excited for the first time, probably in the history, about the services space, right? VCs are starting to talk about the services, the AI-enabled services, the services as software. And frankly, what I have been telling a lot of the founders and a lot of the people in my network, this may be probably the only time when you can start a services company and it would be a venture-backed company, and you can actually convince VCs to write you a check and to do it. So if that is something that you have been considering, it's definitely the time. And yes, as I've said, VCs are hoping that AI will change the economics of the services, and so that now AI-enabled services may break this traditional link between revenue and hiring more staff. It would lead to lower operational cost, and as a result, the bet is that more and more startups, by using AI, can automate a lot of the manual work and thus achieve a venture scale in the space in which it wasn't possible before. However, only the time will tell if that will actually happen, because even if AI is able to change the economics of service delivery, the question is, how will it actually impact the market? There have been a bunch of fairly impressive companies that have been automating their service delivery, have been able to achieve probably 95, 97% of automation, and they still have not dominated the market. So the question is, will this change with AI? That is an open question. Now, not everything has to be a business. And in this last part of the talk, I would like to quickly cover several areas that have nothing to do with building a business. Nonprofits, conference talks, getting involved with standards bodies, open source projects. There are times to pursue each of those, right? If the mission is public good focused, if it's not-for-profit driven, start a nonprofit. And there are plenty of examples of people who have done it quite well. There are plenty of examples of people who have given talks. If an idea is an early stage idea, and if you're just looking for feedback, just give a talk. If the topic is valuable, but not enough for a standalone business, do that. Why not? Write a blog, share some research. If the technology would benefit from broader adoption, and there is not necessarily a need to monetize it, or if the people want contributions from the open community, start an open source project. Like Spire is a great example. There are standards bodies that are also a good way to get involved with the communities. And so I have definitely overestimated the number of slides I can cover in 30 minutes. So I'm going to nicely skip through some. But again, how do you decide which of those options is the best for you to pursue? Think about your motivations. Think about what it is driving you and your decision making. Is it money? Is it passion? Is it the desire to have impact? Is it the desire of a certain lifestyle? Think about the first order of consequences for each of those decisions. Remember that there are different ways to be successful. And remember that 10% of 100 million is actually the same than 100% of 10 million. That is something that many founders in the security space, particularly in the services, realize. Remember that there are plenty of options, right? You can have a high impact play, and yeah, you may not make a lot of money. You can also start with the high impact play where you make no money and then end up building a 2.7 billion security company the way Marty Roche and the team have done with Snort. You can also start by giving talks and sharing research and then build a company around it the way the Signal founder have done and by obviously offering a lot of insight for the community, but also building a product that I'm sure many of us use in this room. Remember, there are hundreds of niche, important security problems that do need to be solved. Not everything has to be venture scale. Not everything has to be venture backed. But all of those problems need founders, and they need people addressing them. Thank you.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? Okay, so we do have a couple questions from the audience, sir. I'm just going to walk over and connect with you. You did pretty good. You wrapped up in perfect timing for the questions.
Such a strict team of organizers. They just force you to do everything on time.
I love this question. I have a very big passion for AI. So what is the future of AI, sir?
I feel like I am being asked to solve the problems that millions and billions of people around the globe have not yet been able to solve. Look, I think the future of AI is bright. I don't think I have the kind of insight that anybody else would not be able to offer. I think it's going to transform some areas of security specifically. It's going to be absolutely irrelevant in others. And only the time will tell which is which, right? Today, everybody's... the good news is that I think people are generally very optimistic, and they're trying to use it in places where it does matter, in places where it actually makes a difference. I also think that there are some of the use cases, and I'm not going to be calling out the specific ones because I have friends building companies in those spaces. There are some of the use cases where it probably isn't the best way to solve the problem. But at the end of the day, I think the future of AI is better than the future of AI in security.
Thank you. What do you think about taking money from corporations?
I think it comes down to the problems you're trying to solve and the kind of terms you're getting and the role the corporation would be playing. So obviously, if you, again, you can look at it from this perspective. If you are trying to become a part of an ecosystem of players, like just say you're looking at some of the identity security leaders and you would like to be on their marketplace, or you believe that there is going to be that is going to be a great distribution channel for you, then getting a small amount of money from say Okta Ventures may be a good idea. Now, maybe you believe that the same is true for some of the like large endpoint security companies out there, and you believe that you can leverage, you can partner up, you can leverage their networks. That is also a good idea. I think many people often overestimate the amount of impact that will have. I have personally, again, if you're thinking about cloud providers and just CSP platforms, marketplaces, there is definitely a way to build billion-dollar companies by just like latching on to their distribution channels. I don't know if that is true for security, where in security, being on the marketplace of Okta or CrowdStrike or any of other security company isn't really the key to success. Like you still have to do all the legwork, and people aren't just going to buy because you're on that marketplace. So again, it kind of depends what you're trying to do. I think many people get money from corporate venture funds, believing that if they do so, the chances that that company is going to acquire them will go up. I have personally heard, I have had this conversation with many people from CVCs, and the answer I would typically get, it doesn't really work that way. Because at the time when the company is making the decision of whom to invest into, they're just making an investment decision. By the time they are looking to buy somebody, maybe in the same space, they will be looking to either buy a leader or buy maybe a company that is not doing all that well, and it is frankly just cheap to acquire. And they wouldn't necessarily pursue the acquisition. In fact, in the same way as it works for VCs and it works for many other things in life, when the potential acquirer knows too much about the company, they may probably be less likely to buy because they would know everything and how it all works.
We have a plethora of questions. So if we could actually put up Ross's QR code to his LinkedIn, that would be helpful. Let's see, the final question is, who is funding 100% of the 10 million firms?
Sorry, say that again.
Who is funding the 100% of 10 million firms?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, 100% of the 10 million firms. So if it did refer to this slide, yes, this one, I don't... Who is funding? So I think the thought process here was more that if the founders can preserve 100% of ownership and exit at 10 million, then they would get to divide the 10 million. And many of the service companies have done precisely that. I have some friends who have sold their services companies, and they have done tremendously well because they've never taken any external funding. Now, there are some types of investors, but I would say mostly the angels. Like if you're thinking about making the best decision, that isn't going to haunt you years later with just take some friendly capital from people who believe in you and people in your network, maybe security practitioners, other exited founders. And in that case, there are still financial instruments where you can arrange it in such a way that you're not losing the ownership in your company and you're retaining 100% of it.
Wow, thank you so much, Russ. Wasn't that amazing, audience? What a great job did he do? Out of all the applicants for presenters, we picked him as one of our headliners. So we want to give you from BSidesSF 2025 a little special gift to thank you for your time. We really appreciate you. Give him a round of applause, right? He did a great job.